I'm Bauerle. I'm from the Math Department at UC Santa Cruz, and I'm going to talk about how we're using LaunchPad in particular to stay here. How we're using LaunchPad in support of our online courses at UCSC. In fact, these are UC-wide courses. They are funded in part by the ILTI initiative, the Governor's Innovative Learning Technology Initiative in the state of California. As you probably have heard, University of California system, as well as the other institutions in California, are tackling more and more enrollment as well, at the same time with reduced funding by the state per student, at least at UC. I'm not so sure if Cal State and at the community colleges how it plays out, but I have noticed it. I've been at the University of California now since 1988, the first 6 years as a student, and then since then as a faculty member in the Math Department. And we still have basically the same number of faculty, but we serve about 3 times as many students. Those students have to go somewhere, and they're not going into graduate student education. We still have roughly the same number of graduate students, but we now have routinely calculus courses of 450 students or more. And then in the last fall, we had over 800 students in our calculus classes. We offered them online so we could accommodate that, but still, it's crazy. It's a challenge. It's a real challenge. And so my colleague Tony Tromba and I, who I have collaborated with on this project for the last 4 or 5 years, we kind of realized a few years ago that the trend is not conducive to learning for the students. We have to teach at odd hours of the day now. We have more and more students in the classroom, and the classrooms themselves weren't necessarily designed to be classrooms. And so basically, it means that students either aren't awake yet, or they're already asleep again, or they're not even showing up to begin with, or the presentation is not effective because of the tools that we have in the classroom aren't suitable for teaching. So these are some of the challenges that we faced. And then when the call came to have faculty develop online courses, he asked me if I'm interested in developing this. And of course, we had absolutely no idea how to do this, but being faculty, you kind of know what to do. You research it. You ask around, you look around, and then you look for partners. We have the content knowledge, and we've both combined 60-some years of teaching experience. My colleague is a senior member in the department and a distinguished professor, and so he's got 40-some years of teaching experience all across the world. So we have the teaching experience, and we have the content knowledge, but we, of course, had no media experience, and we also knew we needed a book. We needed not just a book, but we needed something that would allow the students to engage with the material more effectively than what we had observed up to that point, in part because students often simply don't use their textbooks correctly. They use it to find homework problems, but not to actually engage with the material. And so what we were looking for was a textbook that would be interactive, multidimensional, and would really help us make sure that the students actually use the book. And that's what then connects us with Macmillan. We actually asked several publishing companies to kind of see what they could offer us, and Macmillan was all over us. Well, at the time it was Freeman, and flew people out to visit us in Santa Cruz, whereas other publishers, including Cengage and Pearson, they told us they will get back to us, and we never heard from them again, or they simply said, no, we don't have anything that would meet your needs, and weren't interested. Now, of course, they all made a mistake. They know that now, but we were and are continuing to be very, very happy with the support that we're getting from Macmillan and the collaboration. And it's not just UCSC and Macmillan, it's also UC Online, which is housed at the Office of the President in Oakland. So it's really a very successful collaboration, and we'll hope to continue this. So we've completed 3 courses now. So calculus is a whole sequence. There are either 3 semesters or 4 quarters. We're in the quarter system, so we have completed 3 quarters of calculus, and we have 1 more quarter to go, 1 more course. And then we'll have the complete calculus sequence, and we're offering it now to UC students across the system. Mostly they're still UCSC students, but the courses are available to cross-enroll. That's what the process is called at UC. And also to non-matriculated students, international students. We've had students from China. In fact, I just responded to an email from a student who is in China right now. And we, of course, have the opportunity, like anybody who teaches online, to have your students spread around all over the world and take your classes. And we just on Monday started 3 courses running, and we have students are spread around all over the world. It's really cool. I really do enjoy it. So let me show you a little bit. I mean, Macmillan plays a central role, or LaunchPad in particular plays a central role in the delivery of the content and also the gathering of information about the students as well as them giving us scores for us to grade them. There's also the other piece, that's the lecture videos, and I want to show you a little bit of that. And we also want to kind of set the stage in our courses. So let me see if I can get this. Well, no, not yet. So I need to, and I'm not going to play the whole thing. So I don't have time. I only have 15 minutes. So usually it takes about an hour to go through the whole presentation, and I'm cutting it to the Macmillan part mostly. But still, what we want to do for the students, we want to set the stage that this is something new. This isn't just premeditated by not having a large enough classroom to squeeze everybody in, but this is driven by pedagogy. We want to do things that engage you more with the material, that allow us to do more than what we can do in the regular classroom. So the next thing we do, we also show them this introductory, no, not that. Again, to set the stage. Again, I don't have time to show the whole couple of minutes of the intro video. Now, this may, of course, seem very corny and sort of somewhat silly, but there's actually a real purpose that we start with this. This is, first of all, that's the cover of the hardcover textbook for vector calculus by Marsden and Tromba. Tromba is my colleague and collaborator. But there's also a reason why this is on the front cover of the book. It's relevant. That's why calculus was invented, to figure out how the planets move, velocity, motion. I mean, that's really why students are in the classroom, is to understand how the world works, and we want to relay that. Often mathematics is perceived to be about formulas and about rote manipulation, algebraic, symbolic manipulation. But there's real reasons why students sit in the classroom. We've got, of course, students that are mathematicians, are going to be mathematicians and physicists, but we also have chemists, we have biologists, we have social scientists. And they all are there for a reason, and often that reason can't really be fully addressed in the classroom. In the classroom, you've got a curriculum to cover. You stay in the middle. You can't really do a whole lot of review, even though a lot of students need a lot of review. And you can't do a lot of enrichment because you will lose the people who are just there to get the grade, and you don't have the time. So most of your class time in the lecture is spent in the middle. Whereas in the online environment, we're not bound to that. So one of the things we've done is develop these enrichment lecture videos. These are at the beginning of Calc 1, and we'll have similar ones in Calc 2, 3, and 4 once we have the time to actually create the content. These were done in the NOVA-style setting. We had them shot at the Berkeley Film Studios, and it features my colleague. And whoops, I keep hitting the wrong buttons. I don't do these that often.
As we encounter
this is my colleague Tony.
Cathedral video.
We incorporate, again, I don't have time to show you a lot of these.
A tree rooted in a moving.
So it's giving context, historical context to the material, and we include some of the NOVA videos on the history of the calculus about Newton. Again, I don't have the time to really show you, but we have a whole sequence of these enrichment lecture videos, again, to set the stage for the students, to make them understand there's more to it than just the calculations. Now, the lectures themselves are carefully planned, shot and edited. This allows us to create accuracy that you don't have in the classroom. And these are not just these historical enrichment lectures, but the lecture videos themselves. In the classroom, you also spend a lot of time, wiping the board or setting things up, messing with your computer. I've done this many years, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Whereas in the online environment, you do it until you get it right, and then you record it, and then it's there. And of course, the students can replay that ad infinitum. They can watch it at any time. Doesn't matter what their biorhythm is. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. I'm actually very impressed at how many of you have taught online or teaching hybrid courses and doing a real variety of engagement with your students using technology. We bump into some of the issues at our campus that some of our colleagues are just not really very capable of thinking outside of their own personal experience of how they have experienced teaching and how they want to teach. There are some colleagues who are very much opposed to using technology in this way and using online education. Of course, they don't teach the 500 student classes. They don't want to do that, because it's hard, right? I mean, it's hard in either setting, whether it's in the face-to-face setting or if it's in the online setting. And it's a lot of work, and they don't want to do that, and it's much easier to oppose something than to actually try to figure out how to solve the problems that we're having. But in any case, you may have similar issues at your institution. It's actually, overall, our feedback is very, very good, so we're happy with the way it's working. Now, we can also use then, of course, applets and graphing utilities and so on in our lectures. So this is one of the tablet lectures that we have created. So we have a sequence of about 90 to 100 per course. These are done on a Wacom tablet, scripted lecture videos. They replace the in-class lecture experience. And again, I don't have time to play the whole thing, but
hello and welcome back.
This is me talking, and then it goes through the.
That is.
And we
the
have,
first hash mark is
we talk about area and use a setup. Again, I don't have time to do the whole thing. And it creates the sort of feel in the classroom. Some of the stuff is prepared, other stuff I write out.
Therefore, the area is B over N times H over N.
And so on, and use color, and then you can bring in an applet. This could be from our ebook, or it could be off the web.
As you can see, as
and on and on and on.
Gets larger.
So these are then the typical 5 to 15-minute snippets, and per section we have any number of lecture videos. So this gives the students, it's one leg of the class is the lecture. So we certainly have that. Now, whoops, that wasn't what I wanted. And we do also include, this one is one of our favorite lecture videos of Apollo 8, so we have some applications in physics. It's the launch of Apollo 8. It's just a beautiful lecture. It's a beautiful video from the NASA people. So it's great. You can really incorporate all that stuff. So the next big leg of our class is the ebook. And it's not just the ebook, but also the homework system and the quizzes that's hosted in LaunchPad. So we were able to, for the single variable version of calculus, I don't know how much calculus you've had and how much you remember if you had it, but it breaks down into basically single variable calculus where the functions are just a function of a single variable, like, S of t, the location of an object as a function of time on a straight line. But in reality, of course, the world is more complex. It's a function of several variables. You look at if you're a bumblebee flying, you're not just going to fly in a straight line. You're going to fly in space, right? And you're not just measuring, the position then as a number, but you're measuring it again with coordinates. So your functions are more complex, and therefore, what you can do with them and what you need to be able to do with them is much more complex. So you have calculus of a single variable, and then you have calculus of several variables, so vector calculus. And then within those two distinct approaches, you also have what's called differential and integral calculus. And they usually break down into 1/4 of differential, 1/4 of integral. And it has to do with the kinds of things the calculus allows you to do. In a snapshot, it has to do with rates of change, how things are changing, which everybody understands, but that's important for anything you do, is being able to measure how things change and describe it. And then also gathering up things and collecting them together, calculating areas, volumes, etc. And we were able to take a textbook from an author who unfortunately had passed away, John Rogowski at UCLA, and Freeman allowed us to modify that book, basically gave us full rights, or Macmillan gave us full rights to modify the book, which is awesome because if you've ever seen a calculus textbook or had the bad fortune of having to schlep one around, you could really use it to kind of hit a home run with a baseball, right? I mean, it's big and heavy. Because there's everything in there. Every textbook author is faced with the challenge of having to pacify every faculty member across the country to maximize the chance of adoption of your book. And that means there's a lot of material in there that you as an instructor at your institution won't need and never touch. And the students have to either buy it or they just have to carry it around. So we were able to fully customize the textbook, and we were able to use the images from the book in our lecture videos. So everything is integrated. And we can then combine that with the homework system. And we were also able to do things through a program called Digital First, which is a Macmillan product that allowed us to modify the content, but also add in progress check questions. And this is how we're getting the students to actually use the book, to read and answer questions while they're reading. You've seen similar things yesterday in presentations, so it's a really cool way of getting students to, at least giving them the opportunity or giving them a reason to go to the book other than just looking for the homework questions. Also, the whole thing is less expensive than the hard copy textbook, and of course for the publisher it's less expensive too, as you don't have the distribution of a hardcover book. It's software basically, and no longer selling a book, it's selling software, and that's, I think it's really the way to go in the future. So let me go maybe live to the ebook itself, because we can, and I can show you a little bit about it. So here's, for instance, one section in differential calculus. Students, you've all been, of course, in the LaunchPad environment, or you have seen it. Same format, you go through it. We have applets in there. Some of them we created, some of them we used from the Rogowski text. And then we have these progress check questions. Some are multiple choice. You have 3 tries, so it's a little higher stakes. Homework, we give unlimited tries. Practice, practice, practice. These are a little more higher stake. There's 3 tries, but of course, if it's 3 multiple, you know, it's, yeah, you better get it right. And it gives you feedback, and then at some point you get it right. Of course, you work it out and you get it right, and then you get a little green circle and you get the point. And then in each section, there are a certain number of progress check questions, and you have to answer all of those. And then based on the number you get correct, you get a score. And that score then becomes their reading score. Now, I don't know whether they actually do any of the reading. They can just scan the progress check questions, answer them, but we put their noses in front of the book and get them to do some of the work. And then here there's 5, so you can't just guess. And then some of them are free response, and you have to actually work out the answer. All right? And then others are pull down and so on. Now, I can show you Digital First. This is the corresponding section in Digital First, where we have, this is our authoring tool. So my colleague Tony and I are both authors and users of LaunchPad. And it's been a very productive thing for us to have the ability to modify. We just emailed each other this morning about a typo that we found. We can fix it dynamically, send an email to our colleagues here in 2 floors up, and they can then implement the fix on the servers. So we can dynamically fix typos. It's really, really cool. And we can continually improve it in terms of what we want to put in. And so you can see these progress check questions. It's pretty simple code. It's in XML, and it's WYSIWYG, so you have an interface that allows you to modify this. So it's quite nice. So let me go to another section that shows some of the power of this stuff, because we talk about the book also being multidimensional, and here's what we mean with that. So if I go into this section here, we added this in. This is, again, about the history. There's a special number. Of course, you all know about pi, but there's a number that's just as special. It's E. And it was discovered, or we all believe it was discovered by Leonhard Euler, a Swiss mathematician. And there's a little bit of a story in here that was what we believe to be the path of discovery. Mathematics doesn't just fall from the sky, right? There's mystery around how some of these things were developed, discovered, and there's real philosophy behind it also, how you think about mathematical discovery. Does it already exist a priori, and are we just sort of stumbling on it, or are we actually creating it as we're developing the mathematics? And so there's actual interesting discussions to be had about the nature of mathematics while you're doing calculus, and we like to bring that in. So here's the story of the discovery of E, and my colleague is, of course, a history buff, and he has worked with people in Switzerland that have been at in Basel at the archives of the, so we have access to the sources that then make us relatively certain that we're right. Now, in the process of the discovery of the number E, there were certain calculations that needed to be done to verify a certain fact. Now, if you put all of the proofs of these facts in there, this thing becomes very bloated, and the students will probably get lost in the algebra. Now, some students want to see the details, and if you want, you click here, and up comes a video that gives a proof of this particular fact. So we can embed.
In this video, we will show that.
And again, I don't have time to show it, and I don't want to show it, but if they get tired of me gabbing away, they can click again, and the video disappears. So our book becomes 3-dimensional, and your book actually talks to you. Now, we have to develop a lot more of these resources, but that's something we can do one at a time. You know, these are some of the benefits of having this interactive setup, as well with the online courses. You're building more and more and more, and make the courses better and better and better. So these are some of the things that you get from using LaunchPad. This is the deeper authoring environment that allows us to do this. This is our graduate student advisor at UCSC. Okay. So let me get back to what was I going to do next? Yeah, the next thing to talk about, if I still have time, is the deep integration with Canvas. So let me go back to the PowerPoint and it's a little tricky here. Okay, so this is if I didn't have internet. So we also use reading and homework assignments. Again, we were able to customize these both in LaunchPad and in Digital First. The homework questions are algorithmically generated for practice, practice, practice. So we give the students, and we give everything to the students also, all the questions, but we only require them to do a certain number of them. And this, of course, with online homework and mathematics, there's instant feedback, and the students really like that. And it's really a useful thing that students get to see if their answers are correct, and they get to see solutions. Now, there are some issues that we're struggling with in terms of making sure that they're not just getting the answer and they're not really doing the work. So we're still working on fine-tuning that. I think this is a constant battle for any faculty member is how you manage the wants by the students of getting the solutions and the needs of them to actually do the work themselves. How do you get them to do the work? So I don't think we're battling anything unusual here. So we also have quizzes and exams on LaunchPad. So LaunchPad really is the driving force of the content. That's where all the data is gathered about student engagement. That's where all the scores are. Again, we have practice quizzes and practice tests for extra practice for them. These are automatically graded. For the quizzes and the exams, we do a manual regrade. In math, with algebraic expressions, you can make a very tiny mistake, but then, of course, it's symbolically wrong. Forget to close the parentheses of an expression. It's all wrong, and the computer isn't smart enough yet to know whether a given answer is almost right and completely wrong, or, you know, like a space bar or something that's obviously wrong. And so we have a TA go in or I go in and manually check, you know, just to give students an appropriate score for that work. Now, what's cool about using LaunchPad for tests is that it's consistent with their experience. So they've had the ebook in LaunchPad, they've had the homework in LaunchPad, they have the quizzes, and they have the tests in LaunchPad. So there's no figuring out a new equation editor or a new tool or something like that. So the gradebook in LaunchPad, you're familiar with it. It gives us a lot of information about their participation, and we would love to be able to rely on the minutes more. Some of these numbers are probably a little inflated. So we talked about this yesterday. But still, it's an awesome utility to get information about the students. Now, what we also have, and this is something when this started happening, I was crying because I was so happy. I really was. I mean, I get tears in my eyes because we had the first couple of years, we had to manually move our scores over. When you got 5, 10, 25 students, that's okay. But when you got 500 and you have to move, you have to merge databases, it's a pain because students don't use necessarily the same name. So deep integration means single sign. So our learning management system that's precipitated by the university that we have to use is Canvas. We have single sign-on now, so there's deep integration between LaunchPad and Canvas. So they use the UCSC register-driven credentials to log into LaunchPad. Works like a charm. And that also means that they connect to LaunchPad where the lecture videos are, and then they have assignments to click on. So these assignments they click on, and it sends them directly to the correct place in LaunchPad. So if it's a reading assignment, it takes them to that section in the book. If it's a homework assignment, it takes them to the homework. If it's a quiz, it takes them to the quiz. So it works like a charm. And the scores travel backwards automatically, which is, when I heard that that's the case, I really cried, because when you have so many students, that's a real hassle. Right? And there are some technical issues occasionally, but overall it works really well. Now, what it does allow us to do is the targeted intervention that some of you have talked about, and we always try to do, is to contact students that are not doing well. And by not doing well, we often mean doing poorly on the exams and not having, and then possibly not having done the homework or the reading, or simply not having done assignments. So we use TA resources to contact students. Before we get to the question, I just want to say that in addition to the intervention, we now are starting a collaboration in the fall with the folks at the Office of the President and the folks here at Macmillan to analyze the usage data that Macmillan is gathering in LaunchPad for the folks at UCOP to understand how students engage with materials online. So this provides, again, another vehicle for collaboration to really, in the end, of course, everything is driven by student learning. the reason we got into the development of these courses is to help improve student outcomes, student learning, and we absolutely appreciate the effort that the folks at Macmillan are putting forth to give us resources that allow us to deliver the content to the students and have them assessed properly with the exams and the homework. There's still lots of work to be done on our end and at Macmillan's end, but we're all working, we're pulling in the same direction, and we're improving. And I'm excited about the next few years. Any questions?
I'm curious, and this may be a little too specific to the California folks, but is there any pushback from other faculty about getting good at doing this? Because what I've heard explicitly at SDSU is that if you become good at teaching these really big sections, especially as they move online, you're complicit in the proliferation of them over time. You're part of the problem. And I've had people from the union say, don't learn how to do this well, because it's just going to mean more of these courses. And they ultimately think that we're going to lose our jobs because they're going to hire some TA to run this course, which is obviously not the case. I'm curious, in the culture at your school, do you hear any of that at all? Or other people?
There are definitely some faculty who have concerns about that, and also we've just had a couple other, one graduate student actually who stepped in for a faculty member who was supposed to teach one of our courses. And, you know, so it's definitely, I would say it's a legitimate concern, but I don't think it's going to come out that way because you still need a faculty member at the helm. And the enrollment numbers have been going up, whether we teach them online or whether we teach them offline. The fact that we're offering them online, I think, gives students a better experience. There wouldn't be more offerings of calculus if we weren't offering them online. You know, it would just mean that the courses, in the fall we were initially going to offer one of our courses online, and it won't happen for other reasons, and now they have to teach it at 7 o'clock at night, Tuesday, Thursday, from something like 7 to 8:45 in the physical classroom. It doesn't decrease the enrollment by one bit. It just, you know, puts another person in the classroom, and I think it's going to be a less effective experience for the students. It remains to be seen where all this is going. Ultimately, my hope is that we can also offer courses in different modalities to students. I don't want to get rid of face-to-face courses. I love talking, like most of you do. It's fun, and you know, and so if we could reduce the enrollments. The fall quarter was hard for us when we had 800 students in the class. There is a certain threshold where, you know, you might think it doesn't matter how many students you have in an online class, but that wasn't my experience. And we'll have it again in the fall, and I'm going to see how that works. I'm going to make a few changes. But we're still learning how to do this effectively. And we also have insisted on capping the enrollments for our online classes at the largest classroom that we have on campus, so that we're not somehow suddenly serving 2,000 students and it's still just one instructor. Because that's really where workload comes into play, as well as then.
Although, I mean, my counter-argument to that workload stuff is if you know what you're doing, it's not more work, and that's the dirty secret that they don't want to talk about is that if you're good and you capture the efficiencies that these guys help provide, this is not 10 times more work than if you had 100 people and now it's 1,000, right? If you know what you're doing, that curve is not this, right? That curve flattens out pretty quickly, but they don't want to hear that. I mean, you know.
Well, there's still management issues. You have more TAs. I mean, our TA to student ratio is 80, you know, 1 to 80. So if you got 1,000 students, you could suddenly have 12 TAs to manage. If you got 200, you got 2.5, 3 TAs to manage. That's significant. And then you also have more students that need extended time, have other, you know.
Emailing you.
At the end of the quarter, you have more requests for incompletes. All that stuff that happens, that goes linearly with the number of students and becomes more work